Sometimes, excessive trust in a loved one can lead to the collapse of everything and everyone. For a long time, Anastasia achieved everything on her own, constantly overcoming various obstacles and navigating the black streaks of a capricious fate. From early childhood, Anastasia, thin as a reed, had a gentle, memorable, and delicate appearance. Although she couldn't boast of full breasts or a rounded bottom, she still attracted men with her lightness, agility, and the sparkle of her intelligent brown eyes. Her soft, silky light brown hair, which in her youth fell to her waist, was later cut to her shoulder blades, enhancing her growing charm and becoming an integral part of her image by the age of 30. As her income grew, Anastasia developed her own style, turning perceived physical flaws into visible assets. It's no wonder, for trouser suits, long dresses, and fitted skirts made her look like a strict yet captivating young teacher, attracting the attention of high school students with her mere presence. Her constant attention to skin and hair care, along with her general neatness, allowed her to appear 10 years younger. This truth was humorously reflected when, one fine summer day, a suspicious saleswoman in a grocery store asked her for update when she tried to buy a non-alcoholic energy drink. At 35, when this story began, Anastasia was, as they say, on top of the world. However, to achieve her high position, she had to overcome significant obstacles from early childhood. Quite unexpectedly, her father suffocated in the garage after deciding to drink and falling asleep with the engine running. Malicious tongues claimed that a neighbor, to whom he owed a debt, led the drunken Yakov to his final resting place. Naturally, the police didn't delve deeply into the matter, simply writing it off as an accident. The state awarded Nastia a small survivor's pension. Her mother, Tamara Nikolaevna, did not give up. Instead, she believed that she could mend the gaping wound in her daughter's soul, caused by the loss of her father, with constant injections of cash and expensive gifts. She took a demanding job in woodworking, eventually rising from a cubic capacity calculator to a mid-level supervisor, which required her to spend days and nights at work, especially during the timber harvesting and removal season. The demanding work turned Tamara into what people called a woman-man. She was a powerful and decisive woman, capable of entering a burning hut and stopping a galloping horse. Given her strong, sturdy build and formidable character, the part of the expression referring to the horse might have been more literal than figurative. Tamara Nikolaevna earned a decent wage by the standards of the late 90s, justifying her constant absence from home. She commanded respect both from her male colleagues and the management at the large woodworking enterprise where she worked. However, the 90s flew by, followed swiftly by the 2000s. Due to her mother's constant busyness, Nastia grew up like a beautiful but wild and lonely flower in a flower surrounded by supervision and attention, yet utterly deprived of parental love. Nastia's relationship with her mother was strained, as Tamara often retained her boss-like demeanor at home. This dynamic led Nastia to fight for her independence and assert her right to make her own decisions. It was only at the age of 18 that she managed to break free from Tamara Nikolaevna's domineering influence. Instead of following the conventional path to college to become yet another ineffective manager, Nastia chose to attend a vocational school, where she trained as a pastry chef. After working as a cook in various establishments for several years, Nastia gained a thorough understanding of the restaurant business. Meanwhile, Tamara Nikolaevna had climbed higher in her career, joining the management team of a major enterprise. She eventually listened to her daughter's arguments, believed in her, and promised to finance her venture on the condition that the business be registered in Tamara's name. Despite her intelligence, determination, and erudition, Anastasia was very trusting, and her mother sought to mitigate risks by taking on most of the paperwork and responsibilities. It all began with a small cafe inside a residential building. With great effort and modest wages, they managed to assemble the necessary staff. Nastia herself juggled multiple roles, dashing around the kitchen as a chef and handling the accounts in the evenings as the chief accountant. Over time, the cafe, poetically named Calm Pyre, began to attract a loyal customer base and turn a profit. As soon as the cafe started generating income, Nastia planned an expansion. She purchased another premises closer to the city centre and established a second cafe similar to the first. This pattern continued, and thus she transformed into a significant player in the cafe network business. In her city of regional significance, both young men and older men tried to court such a prominent woman. However, Nastia had little luck finding a worthy partner. It wasn't a case of being lucky in money but unlucky in love. Rather, Nastya's strong character often surpassed that of most men. Relationships would last a maximum of 1.5 to 2 years before ending, usually because she refused to accept dominance and always played the first violin. This dynamic quickly tired her partners. Resigned to her situation, Nastya decided to have a child with one of her temporary boyfriends. Primarily for herself, this is how Olya was born, a beautiful child who greatly resembled her mother. When Olga's father left, unable to conquer the headstrong woman, Anastasia didn't even file for child support and raised her daughter alone. She could proudly say she was the mother of a second grader. By that time, Tamara Nikolaevna's body had worn out from stress and constant overwork, culminating in a stroke. The determined woman pulled herself back from the brink, but the right side of her body remained significantly impaired. Although she managed to regain some movement in her leg, her arm barely functioned, and doctors were pessimistic about a full recovery. Consequently, she could no longer continue her work at the woodworking enterprise. The board of directors reluctantly retired her with a well-deserved pension. Her colleagues, who deeply respected Tamara Nikolaevna, promised to support her if needed. Evgeny Voroboyov, the chairman of the board and the de facto all-powerful manager of the enterprise, was particularly generous in his promises. "Tom, listen," said Evgeny in an informal setting, "we've weathered so many troubles together. Losing you is an irreparable loss." "Thank you." Evgeny Viktorovich, Tamara replied, her voice somewhat distorted by the stroke. "So know that if anything happens, whether to you, Nastya, or your granddaughter Olga, you can always reach out to me. I will help. I give you my word." "I hope nothing bad happens." "And I hope so too, Toma. But the world is unpredictable. Don't hesitate to use my resources and power." Despite these assurances, there was no need to ask for help. Tamara Nikolaevna received a decent pension and moved into her daughter's 2-story country house. Nastya's thriving business easily supported their girly family. Everything seemed to indicate that they were on a steady path forward. After Tamara Nikolaevna was discharged from the hospital, it seemed that, after all the difficulties she had overcome, a period of stability, if not prosperity, had finally begun. It was at this time that Ivan Gennadievich Popov entered their lives. Ivan was the manager of a small restaurant, which was unfortunately in decline due to his adherence to conventional methods and reluctance to seek innovative solutions. Ivan, despite his 40 years, presented himself well. He drove an expensive car, dressed in business suits, and while he was bold, he sported a short, rugged beard. Familiar with the gym, Ivan frequently worked out to maintain his physical fitness. Throughout his life, he had many mistresses, multiple marriages, and paid regular child support for his 3 children from 2 different women. Anastasia and Ivan met at a city forum organized by local authorities to promote tourism and foster a supportive environment for new businesses. Both were invited as experts and speakers. Their initial encounter was somewhat contentious. Ivan ignored Anastasia's request to move aside to give her more personal space, leading to a brief but heated exchange that ended as the audience began to arrive. Ivan's deliberate attempt to assert dominance contrasted sharply with his gentlemanly behavior in public, creating an intriguing paradox for Anastasia. Women often find themselves attracted to bad guys because they stand out from the average male and exhibit confidence. By the end of the forum, a dialogue had started between Anastasia and Ivan, continuing in a nearby cafe where they discussed business matters. Their parting was amicable, with a promise to meet again. And so they did, repeatedly, until Ivan eventually moved into Anastasia's country house. This move initially displeased Tamara Nikolaevna, who had a deep-seated distrust of eloquent men. It took Ivan nearly a year to win over Tamara Nikolaevna. Once he did, she was even pleased that her daughter had found such a seemingly decent man. With her reluctant blessing, the couple decided to marry, opting for a simple ceremony without extravagant celebrations. Anastasia even chose to take Ivan's surname. Deciding not to make changes to avoid unnecessary paperwork, the married couple signed the necessary documents and began conducting all business together, merging their enterprises. It's hard to say why their period of prosperity was replaced by complete darkness. Initially, Popov likely had no plans to deceive his mother-in-law and wife. In fact, for 3 whole years he tried to control himself and remained faithful. Later it was revealed that his treachery was inspired by his influential mistress. At that time, Anastasia had no idea there was a competitor. Moreover, during the time they spent together, complete trust developed between the spouses. As a happy wife, she started to distance herself from business affairs, with Ivan taking over the lion's share of the work. She didn't even question why her husband began staying late more frequently. She simply didn't want to stress herself out for the first time in her difficult life. She felt a long-awaited sense of relaxation and believed she could rely on her strong husband and just go with the flow. The first warning sign for Anastasia should have been when Ivan began gradually transferring some key documents to himself. He explained it simply: it was easier to communicate with business partners when all authority was concentrated in one hand. He used a similar explanation to convince his mother-in-law, Tamara Nikolaevna, to rewrite her will, which had been prepared after her first stroke. Although she was reluctant, the elderly woman agreed to change the will, leaving Nastia with simple real estate, a country house, while everything related to the business would go to the son-in-law after her death. In hindsight, all of this seems suspicious. However, when Popov's preparations, accompanied by smiles and kind words, were spread over time, they didn't appear alarming or dangerous. On the contrary, Tamara Nikolaevna was glad that her daughter wouldn't share her own fate of living alone. Naturally, when the will was rewritten, no one was in a hurry for Tamara Nikolaevna to pass away. Nastia and Olya calmly went on a trip abroad to unwind a little from their pressing matters. Upon their return, they discovered that just before boarding the plane, Tamara had fallen ill. Ivan, the first to realize something was wrong, called a doctor. External surveillance cameras captured a blonde woman in a white coat entering the house. What happened inside was known only from Popov's account. According to him, the unknown woman administered an injection and left. 12 hours later, Tamara Nikolaevna passed away in her sleep. Of course, the police did not investigate deeply into the circumstances of the case. To law enforcement officials, it was evident that an elderly woman, who had never fully recovered from a stroke, could not withstand a new attack. On top of everything, Nastia's mind, temporarily shattered by the grief of her loss, was in no state to question the events. Somehow I didn't start to compare the many inconsistencies of this tragedy, which is why I spent the entire time preparing for and holding the funeral as if in a fog, unable to think critically. To Ivan's credit, he did not immediately strike another blow at his wife. Instead, he waited almost 6 months until Nastia recovered from the worst loss of her life, and just before summer, stunned her by revealing he had been dating another woman for a long time. When the realization hit her, she rushed to her home computer to review the video recordings from the day her mother fell ill, only to find that the important files had been deleted beyond recovery, as confirmed by a hired computer specialist. Enraged, Anastasia called her now ex-husband and hurled a barrage of serious accusations at him. Ivan, however, calmly suggested that such matters should not be discussed over the phone and arranged a meeting at a cafe. Nastia, I understand how it all looks from your perspective, Ivan began to persuade the angry woman gently, but I had nothing to do with Tamara Nikolaevna's death. I respected her very much. I'm surprised you could connect such disparate facts. Are you saying one blonde woman arrived at the house and another defended you in court? Nastia spoke quietly to avoid attracting attention. Moreover, you couldn't even tell the police which number you called for the ambulance. Yes, they weren't very interested, to be honest. Nastia, you're delving into unfounded accusations. Do you have the video files so I can see who you're talking about? No. They were clearly erased. But not by me. So don't make baseless accusations. I was also surprised that it wasn't an ambulance that responded, but only one specialist. And as for the woman at the trial... Your current one, Anastasia interrupted. What's her name? If you prefer, then yes. My current defended me in court. Her name is Inna, and she is a highly qualified and versatile legal specialist with extensive experience. That's why I sought her help in this difficult time. Just as I helped you, Ivan. Your restaurant was on the verge of ruin when I invested my efforts and resources into it. I trusted you completely. I thought your words and promises meant something. They do, Nastia. That's why I, out of the goodness of my heart, gave you nearly 3 million out of court to ensure you can live comfortably for a while, but that's a pittance, your mistress, and you effectively disinherited me. Moreover, I'm ruined. Anything can happen in this world, Nastia. But you are strong, and you can handle it, and, forgive me, but I have to go. This conversation shouldn't have taken place at all. For several months, Anastasia was in a state of paralysis after such a profound betrayal and couldn't bring herself to do anything. Money was quickly dwindling, and she had no desire to start a new business. It's uncertain how long this would have continued if not for an invitation from the local administration to attend the next city forum dedicated to business management issues. Naturally, Nastia was reluctant to go, as she felt empty inside. But then, her daughter intervened, practically forcing her withdrawn mother to face the world. I understand that everything that happened is terrifying and painful, but you have to get back on your feet, Mum. We need to move on, Olia said almost on the eve of the event. How you've grown up. Nastia looked at her daughter with love. I am also a Fey diva, just like you, don't forget that. And in our family, women aren't used to giving up in the face of difficult circumstances, Olia replied, her support somewhat naive but effective. This inspired Anastasia for the first time in a long while. She visited a cosmetologist, refreshed her appearance, and the very next day she was fully prepared, reminiscent of her best years when the business was just taking off. Initially, it was very uncomfortable for her to be in the public eye again. The environment painfully reminded her of her first encounter with Popov. It seemed as though fate itself was testing her strength, especially when the man next to her exhibited similar behavior to her ex-husband, despite looking markedly different. He appeared to be about 40, clean-shaven, with neatly tied long black hair. Unlike Ivan, he was tall, broad-shouldered, and slender. When Nastia asked him to move his chair back a little, the stranger complied calmly but gazed thoughtfully at her with his big brown eyes. He remained largely silent throughout the evening. However, when he took the microphone, he captivated both the audience and Anastasia with his pleasant, magnetic baritone. He spoke clearly, concisely, and to the point. Thank you. You helped me a lot with your insights when I needed them. Nastia respectfully thanked her neighbor as the event concluded. I liked how confident you were. Anastasia Fedeva, the man read the name on her badge, noting her active participation. And Tamara Nikolaevna Fedeva. By any chance, is she related to you? She was my mother, Nastia replied, astonished, given the size of the city and the fact that her deceased mother was still remembered. Runs a closed, export-oriented enterprise. At the same time, it is extremely private. Really? And how is she doing? There was no change in expression on the stranger's stoic face, his nameplate turned upside down. Unfortunately, she passed away nearly a year ago. But alas, our parents aren't immortal. My father also passed around the same time. He held your mother in high regard. Who was he? Nastia inquired. I'm sorry, I haven't introduced myself. My name is Anton Evgenievich Vorobyov. I am the son of Evgeny Viktorovich Vorobyov. Does that name ring a bell? Yes, my mother held him in high regard too. I'm sorry for your loss. How have you been? Unfortunately, my enterprise is far from its former glory. When my father passed, I had to contend with other directors. No, I defended my share, of course. But now the enterprise is more of a collection of disconnected workshops, with little cohesion to maintain a steady flow of finished products. But rest assured, I'm in the process of unraveling this puzzle, Anton explained, a hint of anger flashing in his brown eyes before his demeanor returned to its contemplative calm. And how is your chain of cafes? Flourishing, he asked in turn. No, Nastia shook her head. It's a rather long story, and I'm not sure you'd be interested in it. No, wait. Let's find out right now if I'm interested in what you have to say. To do that, you need to answer a key question. Are you responsible for losing your business, or did someone help you lose it? Someone helped. Nastia sighed heavily, uncertain where this conversation was headed. Is that so? Anton raised an eyebrow. Then I'm interested in hearing your story. You see, Evgeny Viktorovich promised your mother assistance if things went awry. As his sole heir, I perceive our meeting as a sign from above, for I am bound to fulfill my father's promise. I am very meticulous about oaths and commitments. But you already have so many issues. Anastasia waved her hand. You won't have time to deal with mine. Let me be the judge of that. Anton switched to a tone that brooked no objections. What is leisure and what isn't? There's no point in standing around here. Let's go to the cafeteria. You can tell me about your troubles. The cafeteria was the same one where she had once continued her acquaintance with her ex-husband, triggering another wave of unpleasant memories for Anastasia. However, once the story was finished, it was evident that even someone as reserved as Anton was controlled with rage at how callously Popov had treated his wife. Several times during the narrative, her new acquaintance clenched his fist tightly, struggling to contain his emotional outbursts. Are you certain that in court and the doctor who responded to the call, are they the same person? Not anymore. Nastia shook her head. Yes, and the video recordings are lost. Anton, either nodding in agreement or chuckling vaguely, promptly retrieved his phone from his inner pocket and dialed from memory. Yarek, hi, he greeted the unfamiliar voice that answered swiftly. There's a job for you. I'm always glad a voice responded from the speaker. Where do you live? Anton asked Nastia. In the country. Prokhorovka village, Lermontov Street, number 18. Why? Nastia replied. Yarek, did you get the address? Anton confirmed. Yes, boss, came the reply. We'll meet there in an hour. Exactly an hour later, despite Anastasia's objections, the entire group assembled at the gate of the country house. Yarek turned out to be a thin, slightly hunched 30-year-old with round glasses and thick lenses who warmly greeted his old friend. Hello, Anton Evgenievich, he exclaimed. Hello, Yaroslav. I'm glad you came, Anton responded. I couldn't help but come. If it weren't for your father, Yaroslav started, but Anton interrupted him. Let's not talk about that. Meet Anastasia Fedeva, daughter of Tamara Nikolaevna. Oh, really? Nice to meet you. Your mother, though rarely, spoke about you with great warmth and pride, and Yaroslav began, but Anton cut him off. Yarek, Anton interjected. Save your charming words for another time. Let's get down to business. You're a specialist in computer technology. Someone has skillfully erased a crucial video file. Can you recover it? How much time has passed? Nastia answered. About a year. Has anyone accessed the computer since? Anton inquired. No, it was initially under video surveillance. Since then, I haven't managed to turn it on, Nastia explained. Excellent. Yaroslav rubbed his hands together. There's a good chance we can recover at least some fragments. I can't promise the entire video, but a few clips and frames should suffice. To say the least, Olga, who opened the door, was shocked to see her mother return not alone, but accompanied by two men. Moreover, Anton and Yaroslav greeted Olga with respect, shaking her hand and addressing her formally, while her usually composed and purposeful mother seemed confused and even frightened amidst the new acquaintances. Yarek requested coffee and began working diligently with his laptop on the video storage devices. He methodically removed one hard drive after another, placing them into a specialized box to access their internal components. Anton spoke sparingly with the specialist, often gazing out of the window in silence, occasionally requesting coffee without sugar. It was dusk when Yaroslav excitedly presented the fruits of their labor, several video clips showing a woman who bore an uncanny resemblance to Inna, entering the house in a white robe. The comparison was stark, aided by the talented programmer's retrieval of the woman's deleted social media profile and even hacking into the dormant business correspondence of a former lawyer, Inna, who had long since shifted focus after becoming a co-owner in Popov's business. Now what should we do? Should I call the police? The woman asked, visibly shaken, her trust in law enforcement evidently fragile. No, Nastia, Anton replied calmly. Revenge is best served cold. Involving the local authorities might stir things up, but won't guarantee justice. Besides, Inna can easily prove it's not her in the video. But how can I forgive two people who not only took everything from me, but also likely hastened my mother's passing? Nastia lamented. You don't have to forgive them. Not now, Anton reassured her. But we can act with both finesse and severity. How so? Nastia inquired. Yarek, check if there are any job openings in the restaurant industry for our lovebirds, Anton instructed. Got it. Here's one for a cleaner, Yarek reported. Excellent. Nastia, trust me and follow my lead, Anton continued. And Yarek, ensure that this video finds its way into the restaurant's surveillance system. Here's the plan. We'll stage a real spectacle to deliver the most impactful blow. A spectacle. How will that change anything? Nastia wondered. People like them have a weakness. They're thrown off balance when confronted with unexpected improvisation, Anton explained. We won't take unnecessary risks, but we'll orchestrate a dazzling display that will leave our adversaries utterly confounded. A week and a half later, following Anton's meticulous strategy and thanks to the local management's decisions on technical staffing, the financially strapped former wealthy woman secured a job at the restaurant where her ex-husband worked. It quickly became apparent that with Anastasia's financial infusion, Popov's business thrived, bolstered by the formidable Inna, who wielded connections throughout. Anton reassured Nastia not to fret over Inna, pledging to handle this competitor personally. From the snippets of conversation with his influential but unexpected benefactor, Nastia gleaned that Anton had marshaled his resources to unravel the events of the day Tamara Nikolaevna passed away. In essence, he maneuvered his covert network, engaging high-priced detectives who meticulously unearthed every lead, a process spanning nearly 2 weeks. During this time, Nastia integrated herself into the restaurant staff, earning their trust until she gained access to the surveillance system. Seizing the moment, she discreetly inserted Yaroslav's flash drive, activating a program that seamlessly substituted all existing video files with a crucial fragment from the country house where Tamara Nikolaevna once resided. Subsequently, Nastia strategically appropriated food and expensive wine from the cellar, arousing calculated suspicion from the overweight and brazen restaurant manager. When the controversy escalated as planned, Popov personally attended the hearing, the sole individual granted access to review the surveillance footage. On this pivotal day, Nastia deliberately altered her appearance, adorning a headscarf and applying meticulous cosmetics to obscure her identity from Ivan, ensuring a dramatic unveiling at the opportune moment. At the appointed time on the designated day, having informed Anton of the conversation's schedule, Anastasia arrived at her ex-husband's restaurant. "Come in," the manager hissed, anticipating a thorough dressing down from the director for the purported thief in their midst. "All right," Nastia feigned fear convincingly, setting the stage for the anticipated confrontation. Nastia had visited her ex-husband's office before when they were still getting to know each other better. She wasn't surprised to find Ivan seated with his back to the door, preparing to activate the video system. "So you've decided to handle things like this? Shamelessly steal from me and evade responsibility." Popov didn't turn around, asserting his dominance and aggression, a trait he relished displaying whether justified or not. "And of course, you'll deny taking anything for personal use. But unfortunately for you, my CCTV system covers nearly every corner. Before involving the police, we'll meticulously review all your actions." Having finished his accusations, Ivan pressed the button, only to be shocked by what appeared on the screen, a grotesque jester's mask, animated by Yaroslav for maximum effect. From the mask's mouth, the crucial video file emerged and played on a loop, filling the screen uncontrollably. Popov's amazement and fear were palpable as he watched the footage he thought had been erased, showing Inna repeatedly entering the house to carry out her clandestine deeds. "As you can see, you're in no position to lecture me about theft," Nastia declared, removing her headscarf. "You once took everything from me. More than anyone, you sent my mother to heaven." "Nastia, what's going on here?" Ivan finally turned around, signaling to his manager by the door. "Call Inna Mikhailovna," he instructed as the subordinate hurried out. Once the unwitting witness to the baffling video fragment had departed, Popov continued, "Congratulations on uncovering my little secret. Inna is on her way up to join us for a more substantive discussion. You realize this video alone won't win this battle? Besides, my current wife is a formidable shark, even I hesitate to cross her." At that moment, the door swung open and Inna entered the office, exuding authority as she disdainfully sized up her adversary. "And what's this charade about?" she asked briskly, grasping the situation swiftly. "Ah, a video. I see. And then what? Legally, any inheritance was received. My involvement in any alleged crime is unprovable. Even if you have wiretaps or recordings, who will support you? The police? Everyone who matters in this city knows me, from the administration to the courts, including those unafraid to get their hands dirty to ensure a scoundrel like you disappears forever. In the frenetic whirlwind of life, did you consider your daughter before coming here? Anastasia found herself taken aback by the sheer aggression emanating from her adversaries. She almost regretted igniting this conflict when she heard the scuffle outside the door, followed by several subdued blows. Then, as if entering his own domain, Anton Evgenievich strode into the office. "Who are you?" Ivan demanded, startled by such audacity. "It's obvious I'm Anastasia Fadeeva's defender," Anton replied calmly, to which Inna Sergeyevna interjected astutely, "You're mistaken again. Anton Evgenievich has arrived." "I'm well aware of my problems, Inna Sergeyevna. Your professionalism is indeed impressive," Anton countered calmly, standing beside Nastya and commanding the room. "And your correct people of your stature can only be challenged with substantial resources. Only a fool would go all in for a stranger to unsettle our table of discord, right?" Nastya's heart sank momentarily. For a fleeting moment, she thought Anton had come to show loyalty to the villains. It seemed Inna had also misread Anton's intentions. "Yes, Anton Evgenievich, I'm sure you're as astute as your father. Why don't you consider," Inna began, only to be swiftly interrupted by Anton. "Once again, you're right, Inna Sergeyevna," Anton interjected firmly. "I resemble my father not only in appearance but also in actions. In my family we hold exceptional fidelity to our word as the highest virtue. Businesses may rise and fall, fortunes may wax and wane like autumn leaves in the wind. My ancestors lost everything, only to rebuild like phoenixes from the ashes." Every word seemed to tighten Inna's composure. The seasoned woman had little trouble foreseeing her opponent's moves many steps ahead. But Anton's actions were a departure from the usual maneuvers of a conventional businessman solely driven by self-interest. "You've treated Anastasia very unfairly," Anton continued remorselessly. "My father deeply respected the innocent Tamara Nikolaevna. He taught me that influential people like yourself can only destroy wealth. If he were here today, he'd applaud me for seeking justice, for nothing material compares to the satisfaction of justice served." "Gentleman," Anton called behind him, and the door promptly swung open, admitting 3 men clad in identical black suits into the office. "Who are you?" Inna queried, almost for the first time failing to recognize those who now entered her professional domain. Moreover, she was thoroughly frightened, having completely lost control of the situation. The men who entered did not respond to Inna's queries. 2 of them promptly surrounded Popov and his associate. "You may know everyone locally, Inna Sergeyevna," Anton continued calmly, "but at the federal level, your influence is non-existent. I had to enlist the support of a highly influential individual to bring such serious figures to the region, those who have connections in the administration, the courts, and even the prosecutor's office, where they are currently severing all your ties." "Anton Evgenievich, please," Inna's voice trembled noticeably. "No, I won't listen," Inna Sergeyevna, Anton asserted firmly. "You and your spouse will have plenty of time to reflect on your actions in prison. Meanwhile, gentlemen, carry out your duty with that." Anton gestured for Nastya to accompany him and exited the room. It wasn't until she was seated in the car of her unexpected protector that Anastasia fully grasped the gravity of what had just transpired. "Anton, what happens now?" she managed to ask, her heart pounding hard within her chest. "Nothing. The evidence against this couple is substantial enough to send them away for 15 years, Anton explained calmly. They will lose both their influence and their power. While proving Tamara Nikolaevna's murder may be challenging, a thorough investigation under the oversight of the capital will ensure justice prevails, potentially leading to even longer sentences. Anastasia began, but Anton gently interrupted. Naturally, Tamara Nikolaevna's revised will, coerced under pressure, will be invalidated and everything will rightfully revert to you, Anton assured her. And I believe you haven't lost your skills. Under your leadership, the restaurant business in our city will soar to new heights. But you've lost everything, haven't you? Anastasia questioned with concern. Honor is more precious. My father would be proud, Anton replied solemnly. That matters more to me than any material possessions. Shall I take you home?" It was only at the gate that Anastasia broke the prolonged silence. "Anton, I've been trying to process everything that happened. I feel like I've never been protected like this by anyone in my life. I want to offer you my business, because it's only fair." "And what will you do?" Anton asked gently. "Return to woodworking." Anastasia managed a tired but genuine smile. "Anything. I would even come work for you as a manager." Anton smiled back warmly. "Let's see what the future holds then." "Under my command and control," Anton queried playfully. "Even so." "Mom worked with your father and she was delighted about it. Although in character she was very much like me," Nastia replied warmly. "Or perhaps you'd consider becoming my wife?" Anton asked unexpectedly. What Nastia thought she might have misheard. "Maybe you're suggesting I become your legal wife?" "Yes, exactly that. I am alone. You are alone. And you are very beautiful," Anton trailed off invitingly. I don't know if I can just decide like that," Nastia stammered. "You're planning again." "Improvise," Anton urged gently. "Believe me, in 5 years at some event, we'll look back on this conversation and rejoice in our union." "So, what have you decided?" The question hung in the tense silence of the car. Olga's graduation was celebrated joyously by the entire family. Her younger siblings looked on with envy, already dreaming of their own future milestones. In the schoolyard, amid the festivities, Anton and Nastia stood together, successful owners of a thriving restaurant business and well-regarded patrons of the arts. "Do you remember how you responded to my proposal back then?" Anton whispered to his slightly older wife. "To be honest, I thought you were joking," Nastia replied with a warm smile, more beautiful and in love with each passing year, adjusting the Panama hat for their son Genya. "But the joke turned out to be a success," she added, nodding toward their daughter Tamara still in the baby carriage. After a moment's pause, as Olga appeared on the porch, stunning in a white apron and classic brown dress, Nastia waved to her daughter and continued, "Then I remembered that the Vorobyovs don't make idle promises. And I realized it was my chance for true happiness." "And have you found it?" Anton inquired softly. "Yes, I have. I say that with complete honesty and pride, because I proudly bear the Vorobyov name.